It is May 21st, 2017. You're listening to the Fancy Ramen Podcast. I'm your host, Neil Young, and as always, I'm joined with Cookie Skim Milk.
Hi.
Scott Trickle.
Hey.
And for the first portion of this podcast, we'll also be joined with Lizzie Skim Milk.
Hi.
So we're going to do something a little different today. We got an email in criticizing our format quite a bit. First, I'm going to have Scott read this off to us, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what will be changing with the podcast.
All right, so the email goes as follows. Hello, Fancy Ramen people. I am pleased to inform you that I've listened to 6 minutes of your podcast. I am displeased to inform you that it was so unbearable I made it no further, which is a crying shame. Much like forgetting you have ramen leftovers in the fridge is a shame because the noodles get all swollen and gross. I would love to continue listening, but, all caps, exclamation point, please edit down your length and stick to one topic. My mortal brain can only process thought that has been distilled. I love your subject matter. Please avoid jumping around and talking over one another because all that fancy ramen stuff is cool and I'd like to listen to it. Best, a lovely noodle.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
They know what we're talking about with 6 minutes?
I guess they looked at our track breakdown.
That would make sense.
Yeah, depending on what type of episode, if they watch the first half, it's a summary, then the second half of each episode, at least since episode 11, has been the timestamp version. First and foremost, it's great that someone finds the time and wants to put forth the effort to criticize us, because I think that's if someone does that and goes that far as to do so, I think it's worth discussing.
Yeah, we can definitely glean some benefits from this. The main one being that our fans consider themselves lovely noodles, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So good morning, lovely noodles.
After we talked at great length about it, we're going to kind of divide up the episodes a little differently. The more topic-focused episodes will be known as the Fancy Ramen Podcast, and anything we record that doesn't fit into that, or we do after we finish the portion of that serious topic or topics, we'll call the Omake, which I don't think any of you have heard that word before, correct?
You've used it once in the podcast to explain some bonus panel comic stuff, so that is how I interpret it, is it means bonus.
Yeah, more or less extra.
Okay.
And that's where we can get a little more personal and all that type of stuff.
That's where we can have hearts to hearts with our listeners.
Talk about our dietary problems, all sorts of things. This week, we're going to start off talking about Death Parade. We brought up watching Death Parade last episode, and we kind of ended up just binging through all of it at Cookie's recommendation.
Can we talk about how that actually went with the timing real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we use a Slack chat to conduct most of our business, and in the Slack chat, I think it was the day afterward. We had decided this, it was the day after recording. Cookie decided, guys, this is a really good show. I want to finish it.
Well, at least based off the first 3 episodes, I was just like, yeah, there was a cliffhanger there. Can I continue, please? And Neil begrudgingly said, I guess it's up to Scott. So he pretty much just said, ask your mother.
I just figured that of all of us, Scott's probably going to have the slowest rate of watching an anime normally. So,
normally, yes.
and then Scott made notes on the anime that he finished, I think, at least 2 days before Cookie and I.
I panicked that I knew I would be the slow one, and I panicked. So I put down a schedule and I started working on it right away. And so I finished it, and I had posted to the Slack chat, okay, great recommendation. I just never want to binge watch through something like this again, because it deserves to be savored. And I didn't get a response from Neil, but Cookie was just oh, I got to finish that.
It's yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. So much stuff came out. I was just well, I can watch more of this anime. Or video game.
Which is good, since we're a video game and anime podcast.
Yeah, and we will be talking about some of those video games coming up here after this segment. So obviously, we'll be discussing the series as a whole, with the expectation that any interested listeners have also seen the series. So we won't need to go through a synopsis of each episode. We can talk about the general themes, of course, but we're also not worried about spoiling anyone, because if you've gotten this far into this conversation, you should really turn off or skip ahead if you don't want to spoil yourself on Death Parade.
I will also like to give a disclaimer. Whenever we decide we're going to watch another anime, we will set a schedule and a time limit of when to watch and tell our listeners, so that way they're not like, oh yeah, I binge watched the first one and then they did the 4 episodes each, and then this one I did 4 episodes and now it turns out they've watched all of it.
In the future from this, we will always try and hit a way to parse it out.
Right.
And hopefully, I think we will always try and split it out where we're watching 1/4 or 1/3 of it each time.
Yeah.
And we will never binge watch again. I will never binge watch again.
Yeah, spoilers incoming. Death Parade. Who wants to start us off here?
I'm being looked at. So
You wrote the dissertation.
I pulled a Neil in this one, and I just like started typing things out, and then I looked at it and I was like, oh, I need to tone this down. I need to shrink it down. And then I did, and I was like, this is still way too much. I think it's because it was also really hard to actually synthesize a good, like, cohesive summary without summarizing everything and not doing like episode by episode progressive analysis. So I've just got some basic themes out of Death Parade that make me really enjoy this show. Like, it's really good. Death Parade is an anime about judgment. At the end of the day, that is the primary focus or theme. But what I really liked is that it's about judgment in all these different perspectives and ways. It's about the judgment of the arbiter characters towards the humans that they're charged with judging. It's the judgment of humans through the black-haired woman we find out later named Chiyuki, and I'm going to call her Chiyuki for the rest of the episode, and her judgment towards the people who have been sent to Queen Dakim to be judged. It's about humans towards themselves and the people that they're competing against, and their judgments about the values of their own life and the life of the people that they're competing against. And then ultimately, that all comes together as our judgment as a viewer and how we feel about the decisions that are made by the characters, and also how that portrays them and what we feel is right or wrong. Because at the end of the day, in most of these episodes, somebody gets sent to the void and somebody gets reincarnated. And the reincarnated is the better option of the two. So we get to decide how we feel about the results of everything, and it may or may not line up with what the other judgments of characters within the show are. And I like that juxtaposition and that essentially like implicit thought that the writers had, where it is, we are going to make you think very critically about every outcome that happens in this. And there's probably no one who ever watched the show who thought that every outcome was fair or just in their eyes. And I like that too. So what are your guys' thoughts on Chiyuki and Dakim having these very different perspectives into how they judge people? Because Chiyuki is very empathetic to everyone who comes to Queen Dakim. And Dakim, though he can feel human emotion, he doesn't have the context to feel human emotion in an empathetic way. He can only feel it in how it immediately affects him. And so that leads them to have very different perspectives.
I think it's good for, I call him Decim, but
oh yeah, we can do Decim too.
Okay. I think it's good for him to actually see, her side of things and like, oh, well, yeah, it makes sense if you explain it like that type of thing.
He definitely always seems naive.
Yeah, like he's still learning almost.
He's just a child, a doll.
He's a dummy.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
He's a baka.
Would you say that he changes, albeit not a whole lot, but changes in his judgments from episode 1 to say 9 or 10 before he has to judge Chiyuki?
Yeah, definitely.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I think he starts to show doubts roughly halfway through the anime.
It's important to point out that the arbiters are not perfect. So
right.
We are definitely supposed to view some of the judgments as being completely unfair and unwarranted.
Like the very first one, his inability to like determine that. I mean, by all accounts, I don't know if anyone's going to disagree with me, but the husband was kind of a douchebag.
Yeah,
like it was
much.
Unfortunately his misunderstanding that brought them to that.
Yeah.
But they died due to like his jealousy and his paranoia about it, like his inability to communicate.
But he turned out right. And
not
that's
about
why
the kid though, but
he turned out right. And that's why Decim sent him back. Because if you're right, that means you get sent back.
But he wasn't right.
Shh.
I know they kind of left things unanswered because, like, well, did she have an affair, and was it a one-time thing?
I think they explained it.
They explained it in the second episode a little more
Yes.
in regards to that scene of her cheating on her husband, and that might have even happened before
really
they got married. That did happen, but she's also crying in her pillow at that time because she instantly
she knew it was
regrets.
A mistake. Yeah.
It's very important that we see that as our first and second episode, because we learn that Decim has an imperfect, as they explain later, collection of their memories. I kind of think it's more like he's given a bunch of snapshots.
Right.
And he can put things into place, but part of the judgment process and the game process is so he has a better understanding of how they relate to, like how their personality and memories relate to those snapshots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when she lies about the baby and stuff, I knew that she was lying, and I told Cookie, I'm like, no, she was in love with the old him. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, no.
And I think that part might have been true, that she was truly in love with the older version of him, and his love or personality became distorted after the wedding. That paranoia.
Yeah.
As to saying, like, you wanted the outcomes to actually
reverse.
swap.
Yeah, me too.
I would have felt that the more, and I'm maybe just a very empathetic person, but I feel like they both should have been reincarnated.
Yeah. Actually,
I
maybe I should say between the two of them, I was accepting the fact that someone had to go to the void, and I think it was his susceptibility to the corrupting thoughts of infidelity and jealousy, and therefore his like anger, and I don't know, he played the game in a way that was a little abusive as well.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Missing a shot with air quotes.
Well, I think that
it was his fear
actually
of death.
him missing, but like a subconscious twinge hit at that point. Like,
right, because they said it could be what you think could affect how you do in the game type of thing.
I remember from the scene at least that he was like panicking that, she will win. And I don't want to, like, he's decided that because he suspects that she cheated on him, that she should be condemned to death. Like in the assumptions that they've all made, which is why episode 2 is so good, that it like dispels a lot of that tension. Because, the bodies in the back are just dolls, and the winner and loser of the game is not what matters at all. But that's only so we as the viewers, like, that shocking first like hook episode gets us in, and then it explains it to us a little bit better so we can appreciate the nuances to the judgment throughout the rest of the episodes.
Yeah.
So you keep mentioning that one person has to be reincarnated, one person has to go to the void. That's incorrect.
Well, yeah, that I don't think he was saying that was the case.
Wait,
but
no.
Yeah,
he's been saying it like
thinking
that.
that from day one.
Yeah,
that one person goes to the void, one person gets reincarnated.
because there was one episode where the arcade, they both went to the void.
They both got reincarnated.
Did they both get reincarnated? I thought it was the bowling that they both got reincarnated, and the arcade they both went to the void.
I have it in my notes that okay for the arcade they were both reincarnated, which I was kind of surprised. I didn't think that would be the case, and then I was really upset at the bowling one because the only thing that the girl did was get plastic surgery, and she's going to the void. Like, why?
No, they both go. They're both reincarnated in that episode.
In the bowling one?
Yeah, I remember that one very.
I thought we were
specifically.
rewound because we couldn't see the faces. She got reincarnated?
Yep.
Oh, good.
They pan up after they both go into the elevators, and they're both angel faces.
Oh, okay.
So, but I'm pretty sure the mother in the arcade episode goes to the void, but the not the son of the mother, but the son character that is also in there goes.
Maybe I got those
stepson.
switched.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is reincarnated.
No, I actually just thought about that for a second, and I looked it up on the Wikipedia. Apparently, for the bowling one, both do get reincarnated, and that makes sense to me.
That does.
I was confused about that, but I guess I didn't look at the masks, or I hadn't picked up on that just yet. Even though I think they made it obvious. Like, I could have sworn that I thought that the masks indicated where you went after the first episode.
Yeah, they do.
For whatever reason,
but
I think.
But you were probably on like whenever everybody first comes down, they show one mask is hell, one mask is heaven.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But it actually flips depending on the judgment.
Yeah,
okay.
It flips in multiple episodes. Those masks are just representative. I don't necessarily think it's representative of what their outlook is coming in. I just assumed it was like
that just happens to be how they are. Yeah, the duality.
The bowling episode in particular is very important because we learn that Decim and Arbiters as a whole have the ability to send both parties to one place or the other.
Yeah.
We meet Ginty, who is the bartender and arbiter of, I can't remember what floor.
He's 15.
15?
Yeah.
No, that's Keen Deck.
He's 20.
Yeah, that means he's 20 because he was 5 above, which is pretty much the same exact thing.
Yep.
Low.
They got salty about it.
He still sees himself as being better than Decim.
Yeah.
Oh, and actually, real quickly, Keen or Queen Decim, isn't that a play on wording or numbering, Latin numbers?
I guess it would be.
Yeah, but I don't know what QUIN is.
I think that's for 5, and then decim. So I've been pronouncing it with a hard K sound, Dekim.
Well,
but that's just because that's what they do in the anime. But when you call them Decim, it's like, oh, that makes more sense because decimal.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Ginty, the bartender of the 20th floor. When we see him work, we realize that arbiters as a whole are also not flawless to their impartial stance. And like, even if we take that Decim is flawed in many ways, because he is, and even by the end of the series, you can argue he's still very flawed.
But he's aware of his flaw at
Yes.
the end of the series, I think. And that is where we see that growth, is that he acknowledges that he's lacking what he thinks is necessary knowledge to make the judgments.
So to back up just a little bit, Queen Decim is Latin for 15.
Okay.
Oh, that makes sense then.
It's 5 and Decim is 10.
Well, I was going to say, because Quin for quintuple, Decim for 10. And I also looked up, his Japanese characters are Dekimu. So, yeah, so that's why I called him Dekim.
Anywho, Ginty, 20th floor. When we see him, we have a very stark contrast to Decim, because Decim, even
respects
at the start,
human life.
Exactly. He respects people that have lived fulfilling lives. Whereas Ginty, on the other hand, has absolutely no respect for humans. Until a certain point, we learn a bit, but we're presented to this character as being kind of ruthless, purposely pushing people over the edge and passing harsh judgment.
He strikes me as someone who's like, you would use him as an example of burnout, I think, if you compared him to like Dekim. Like he seems not involved in his job in any sort of a passionate way, but just like, let's get this over with.
Right.
You know, I'm going to push you to your edge. I'm going to see how awful both of you are. And then I'm going to condemn at least one of you, probably.
He's like detached.
Yeah, he's totally detached. Like, he just wants to pass a judgment and get it over with.
Speaking of him, why did he not just send what's her name to reincarnation like immediately?
Mayu or whatever?
Yeah. Why did he not send Mayu like immediately?
Is that the fangirl?
I think because he was also reserving judgment on her, but there isn't a good explanation why the like teen heartthrob boy band kid also doesn't get sent anywhere.
He does.
No, he does.
Yeah, he got sent to the void, which explains the last episode where Mayu was like, okay, I'm going to go to the void and take his place.
Yeah.
Which is why she also got sent to the void at the very end there.
I was confused why his body remained behind then.
It's just a doll, man.
Doll, I
Yeah,
guess.
He assumedly just recreated it. To tackle your question on why he didn't pass judgment, there are possibly 2 explanations. The first one is that he did not see enough information from her game to determine whether or not she was worthy of being reincarnated.
She sacrificed herself.
He was confused that because she was going to pee herself.
I totally agree with
he
Lizzie.
didn't know that. Yeah. So he was like, well, why would she sacrifice herself? You know?
Now, on that line of thought, though, the second explanation, and it could be a mixture of these two, this is the one I believe more so, he was unable to do it because he felt something for her.
Well, I think it could be both. I think ultimately his hesitation first comes from his confusion to her decision.
Right.
And therefore, by wanting to understand someone more, like wanting to understand someone is a very like embracing thought. Like when you want to comprehend someone, you spend time with them, and normally it's, a positive like growth.
Yeah.
And I guess he was also asking other arbiters, like, were you ever able to not judge anybody?
They're all like, lol, no.
When he first said that, I thought he was talking about Decim's situation because it was before we knew that Mayu was still in his bar.
Yep.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, she's still here.
Didn't Decim start questioning some of the things too with him? And he was like, well, why do we do it this way?
Yeah. He was just like, because we're arbiters, that's what we do.
Right. But I think him questioning it made him kind of second guess himself.
Decim is an agent of change, I think.
Agent of chaos.
Should we use this as a segue to go into Chiyuki? Because I think we can talk about these things at the same time.
Totally. Okay. So Chiyuki, which is written with the characters of knowing and happiness, is possibly our most tragic character, which is suitable for our finale. Her life's memories are filled with happiness before we learn of her injury. And her injury is the ice skating incident that revokes her ability to skate ever again. And we can't really tell if her movement is hampered to the point where she just can't perform an athletic activity like ice skating, or if she's somewhat more paralyzed than that from the injury, because we don't really see her move after that.
I didn't get that impression
sitting.
That she was.
I think she's able to walk. Maybe.
Yeah, just not like jump or run.
Right.
I was curious though, because it could even be a walk with a limp versus like she could be pretty like seriously injured by it, and that's what keeps her from ice skating. Or it could just be like, don't do this or your ACL is gonna like shred itself. But Chiyuki is essentially like paired with the Chavo story over and over throughout the progression of the show, because in a way she shares similarity with Chavo. Chavo is unable to express herself to the boy because she can't speak words or language.
Opposite.
The
boy can't express himself
to her. I'm sorry. That's right. If she's deaf from birth, she might not know how to vocalize or speak as well. That's kind of what I thought. And that's why she can only respond with a smile. Yeah, that big creepy smile.
I kind of thought it was
that
creepy.
Story.
I totally think it's creepy, but it was a cute story.
That smile is just like, I was assuming at some point that was going to, that was going to become like a murderous story.
I honestly, when they first introduced the story, my first thought was, oh, that boy is going to drown.
It's going to turn dark. Yeah.
It's going to turn dark real fast, but it stayed nice and light.
I'm glad it didn't. But yeah, so she's a mirror of the Chavo story is supposed to be a mirror of her situation. And we get to learn that before we actually learn her situation with the ice skating. And so I feel her form of value comes out of ice skating. And she says explicitly that ice skating is not that important to her. But as soon as she says it's not that important to her, the way her mind goes is, thanks to ice skating, all of these relationships I have that are very important to me exist. And so like that was her form of expression, and it got taken away from her. And I believe that is what like drives her into her deep depression and ultimately suicide.
She very plainly even says that she has problems with humans understanding humans.
Yes.
Afterwards. And that is only expressed after she loses her ability to skate.
Yeah, her quote is, people just can't understand one another. It's wrong to want to understand each other. Also, it poses the question, like that's another implied question to the viewer. Is it wrong to try and understand one another? Because what she's saying is counter to what Decim is trying to do, and that is understand people and their emotions in order to pass a more holistic like judgment on them. This is a really great anime. Like it's really philosophical and it touches a lot of points, and I think it approaches everything with like this very respectful and thoughtful air about each idea that it tries to tackle.
While you may not be able to understand someone's, emotions or motives or whatever, I think what she misses is the acceptance. Like her family would have still accepted and loved her even though she couldn't ice skate type of thing. She hung up on the understanding part, which I think it's more about, accepting somebody just for who they are, even if you don't fully understand them.
Yeah, and I think it harmed her self-value as well, which is the other thing. It's another topic in that is what is the value of life? What is the point of living it? And I don't know if it gets explicitly stated, but at least something very close to the dialogue does happen at a point in which it's the meaning of your life. Oh, that's right. The Mayu girl does it. The meaning of your life is exactly what you make it out to be. For Mayu, it's her obsession with this Harada guy and her like love and appreciation for what he brought to her life. And so her life being all about him is enough value for her. Another thing that confuses Ginty, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So he sends her to the void.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, he lets her go to the void, I think is more appropriate.
So is he in the void or did he get reincarnated?
They're both in the void.
They're both.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, the guy tried to push her. He was about to push her.
Right.
He went to the void.
Yeah, he was.
Good.
Immediately.
He was actually the first guy who went to the void.
The first male.
Man,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The void, yeah.
I think Nona intentionally takes and sends Chiyuki to Decim because Decim himself, as we've previously stated, is a catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
What makes Decim different from his other Arbiter buddies is that he has human emotions. And while we don't necessarily see that from the start, that is what enables Chiyuki to change and eventually make Decim essentially into a pure human minus, the bodily differences during her judgment.
He's able to have a human perspective, at
Right.
least. Yeah, she ultimately endows him with that. And then the big question is, if Decim is the catalyst, like, is he able to impose thinking like a human or human emotional thought onto his other arbiters over time or through his interactions? Are his questions enough to like force that behavior out of them?
I think they are because Ginty. Yeah. But at the same point, like we see that Ginty starts questioning himself and questioning his methods, and he even has
he makes a Mayu wood doll at the end.
right.
Yeah.
But the issue is that in learning that those wood dolls are his past guests that he has deemed memorable enough, we ask the question of whether Ginty was having those concerns,
Doubts or
to begin
feelings
with.
earlier, yeah.
They actually talk about, so the previous owner of Quindecim,
Was Quinn.
and she quit being an arbiter. So I think I am on the bandwagon of no, Decim is not a catalyst. He is just a plaything, an experiment. Because what's her name kind of just seemed, the one lady who set this entire thing up, seemed really indifferent to it at the very end.
I think she seems very serious or focused about it. I
yeah.
think she feigns or plays indifference with
That older
Lotus
gentleman.
Flower Head.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Lotus Flower Head works.
I mean, he's the closest thing they have as a proxy to God,
Right.
but even he says he's a dummy, which like I like that idea too, that they all just see it as this like completely rigid and unchangeable system.
Right.
And that's because like that's just how things are. Like it's not even the system is set up to be this way. It's like the system cannot exist as anything else than what it already is, as emotionless arbiters.
But I also
giving
think this has
judgment.
happened before, based on like his like reaction to, why are you doing all this? And she's like,
It's a waste,
because.
yeah.
It's like rule number 5, or was it 4?
It's 4, yeah.
Rule
'cause
number 4.
They state
If-
3 over and over, and then he comes up with 4 later.
It's
Or
like
he says
if 4, if an arbiter has emotions, it leads to ruin.
Yeah. And that's at the very end too. So we're like left with this. We're left with a lot of open-ended questions.
Like, how did
Yeah.
Decim become human for about half a second?
in a really
Right?
good way though, too. I like that.
The fact that his eyes are what indicate plays off of Scott's specific statement that he obtains human perspective. But it's also important to point out that he gets the Arbiter cross eyes back afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think that might have been important to a second season. Maybe it's too soon to say that there's not going to be anything else, but we do have a lot of questions unanswered, and it would be a problem for an arbiter to be at least mentally and emotionally human. Decim having the human eyes, I think, would draw concern out of other arbiters. And I mean, we already know the big boss, Oculus. That's the Lotus Flower Chin guy.
Okay, yeah.
Oculus obviously is against this idea, but he's not actively taking matters into his own hands at this point.
No, he's investigating on all of it with
Which-
his flower attack.
Yeah.
He used absorb or whatever.
That girl, though, was worried that he would put a stop to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she was like, we're not going to have much time.
Right. And I think that's why she downplayed it as like she didn't care about it, so that like he wouldn't find out about it, basically.
But he knew.
Or need to act on it so quickly.
Right, right.
Yeah, and he never gets in her head either. She dodges that. So
yeah,
like he isn't able to necessarily discern her motives, and because he can't discern them, I think it's also for us as the viewer to not have a full comprehension or understanding of what her motives are either. She plays it very cool, but she seems very interested in it.
Right,
like, her friend Quinn notes that she spends a lot of time focusing on Deckham in particular out of all the people that she's supposed to purvey. I assume we'll score this at the end on how we feel about it.
Yeah.
Neil's giving it a lower score because he wants more.
Yeah.
Well, it's just aside from happening within Deckham, what we start off with is an imperfect judgment system, and what we're left with is potentially even a worse system in some cases. Deckham seems to be better. Ginty seems to still be fucking terrible.
I get more of this was the Chiyuki arc. So it's less about Deckham. He just happens to be side story, and it's all really about like, who's this random assistant that no one else has? Oh, she's human. Turns out dummies can't be in this area for very long. If the arbiters are made out of the same thing, why can their skin still exist?
Plot.
Well, I think you could argue that they have no soul, and so it's not going anywhere. There's is
that what's going to happen?
No tension upon it.
But let's also analyze something that was said by either Ginty or Oculus or one of the characters in the know. I still think kind of Decim is maybe the dumbest character in terms of the knowledge of how things work within this afterlife.
He totally does seem very ignorant to all of that.
And he doesn't seem like he cares either.
That's just his monotone voice.
He cares.
He smiles
cares about the people. What the fuck is wrong with his smile?
Well, he has a good smile by the end of it, though.
Yeah,
it is really funny, though.
the first smile.
Yeah.
Someone brings up the fact that the Arbiters and people like the Arbiters, or these quote-unquote dolls like the Arbiters, are made up of the souls that enter into the void, which draws into question whether or not the void is actually if there's even a worse place to go between reincarnation and the void.
Oculus states that they're standing on top of the void, more or less, and that they draw the souls from the void or whatever. So it is interesting to think that is the source to their existence the recycling of, not even recycling, because reincarnation puts souls back into the system essentially, but I guess the raw energy of condemning these souls to the void, because they dissipate,
So is Ginty the best arbiter? Because he's just like, we got to keep going.
Yeah,
everybody.
He's fueling the fire.
We only get one clear description of what the void is, and Ginty describes it to Mayu when he says that it's a constant feeling of falling. Constant seems to indicate to me that it never stops. So I don't necessarily think you dissipate in the void.
Their light combines and then fades out in
with Harada.
Sequence. Yeah.
Well, I think it's just going further away.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's what I thought.
What was my thought that I just had?
Cookie and I were trying to figure out if they were going to play on something they said more. They kept saying more and more people are dying every second. And
they're getting overloaded.
Yeah, and we were like, well, why? What's happening on Earth? But they never really went into it.
They keep saying 7,000 people a second die.
Yeah.
And multiple characters talk about how that's higher than normal.
Mm-hmm.
How we're being overworked. I think they actually mention in one episode something that's going on that's affecting it.
Did they?
And then they move on.
They don't say what it is, but they suggest that something is happening.
There's an outside force killing people.
Yeah, outside force. I remember that.
Which that sure as hell sounds like it would have been content for season 2.
I know.
Woo.
But they
excited.
Never.
Don't
at
get
least
too
in
excited.
This season.
It's anime. Yeah.
I want to ask you guys what you think of Death Parade as an anime, but not as a story or a narrative. What do you think of the production quality of it?
I think they were definitely trying to go for a certain theme.
Did you guys watch Death Billiards? Either of you two?
No.
Okay. Neil, did you watch Death Billiards?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to talk to Neil for a second then with the Death Billiards thing for just a second, because it'll give you some context about my feelings about the show.
Well, we're being shunned.
Really short. Death Billiards, well, I can explain it to you guys and then to any listeners who may have watched Death Parade but not seen Death Billiards. It's an OVA that I believe it should take place before the first episode. No, that's right. It has to take place in between, like in the middle of Death Parade. You said like episode 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah, I think it's between 6 and 7. So right before you have the series Death Billiards game, you throw this episode right in.
Yeah. Okay. So, this episode has the old mangaka, her husband, which is really cool. It's kind of like a shout out to, I guess the mangaka is a shout out to the OVA, which came first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can tell the OVA came first because it doesn't have nearly as like seamless pairing between the music and like the visuals. They've got the art style down, but they don't have that like type of, I don't know, they have like a stained glass kind of like aura or just like really pretty like visual kind of smear over the art in a lot of it. Like it looks like a very cool color kind of scheme with the purple and the blue and whatnot to it. And I just think like they have this very smooth and subdued type of visual to it, and yet the music that they used was not cogent with that at all. It sounded a little more like just generic, exciting anime music at times, or just generic background. But the smooth jazz and the solitary piano that they use for the anime proper is like just exceptionally well paired with the art style. And so I really adore not only this show for the narrative and the story, but also like the visual elements of it are really good. I could read this as a manga, but I don't think I would enjoy it as much as watching it as an anime, which I always think is a really important quality to note.
It definitely did have like a mood that they set, and I did enjoy the music a lot.
And the ending, like the very ending credits music, in which they just slightly preview for like 10 seconds the next episode, gave me the most like kind of bonfire Dark Souls vibe to it with the type of instrument that they used. And so I just loved it. I really enjoyed this show for a lot of reasons. If I were to give it a score, it would be whatever the perfect score is on the scale.
Really?
For me personally, yeah, definitely.
The animation, watching the OVA kind of pointed out maybe a little bit of a flaw in that with an OVA or just a short one-off, you can focus a lot on the quality of certain aspects. And I felt like the animation and just the artwork as a whole was maybe a tad bit better in Billiards than it was Death Parade.
It looked really good. Yeah. Especially when they were shooting the pool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
It's hard to draw balls. Like anything that's like an orb and clear and has light going through it, that's actually really tough to draw. Yep. And it looked just perfect.
In contrast, when you get to like the ice skating, which by the way, the ice skating scene was actually better than certain parts of Yuri on Ice in terms of animation quality.
I agree.
That being said, that did kind of show some of the flaws behind it.
Yeah.
And you realize at that point that everything has been very still framed and slow action.
A lot of it.
And once you get to that scene, you're like, oh, like...
Yeah. It's not quite perfect.
Yeah. There's something kind of clunky with it.
Right.
Like when she's doing her spin and it just looks like the foot flips back and forth. Like you don't see any rotation at all. Yeah.
I thought that was super weird.
I was just like, oh man, she's moving so fast. It looks like a flip book.
I was really excited. I was like, I wish they'd show more of her feet because I want to know if she's doing axles or flips or I want to use this Yuri on Ice knowledge that I have.
As a whole, I think I'd give it like a 7 out of 10 or a 3.5.
Yeah.
Wait, did you drop your score further?
Yeah. Or no, not. I said before that it
he
couldn't
heard
be
that I
8.
gave it a good score, and so he wanted to take it down a notch.
I want to give it more, but
Death
like
Parade fanboys,
it doesn't wrap up in a neat way for me.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Like, I am talking about it from a story point. So if I was just talking about quality and not quality of the animation, the music, everything in a tight package, I would give it, I think, an 8 or a 9, someplace there. But when you factor in story, it goes to a 7.
I think I'm the same. And I would have rated it worse, actually. But apparently my notes were wrong. And because I was mad about some of the results or judgments of some people, but apparently I was mistaken. So I think it's a 7 for me.
I'm going like a 8.5 for me. The story was just intriguing enough that I really do want that second season. And if everyone keeps giving it 6s and 4s, Neil, they're never going to want to do it. They're just going to be like, Neil was so mean to us. We're not making season 2. Screw that guy.
In some Japanese anime boardroom right now, they're like, we are eagerly awaiting the results of the Fancy Ramen review.
Well, I mean, our podcast runs off of Dave's input. Maybe Crunchyroll runs off of yours. It's like, Neil's watching anime 24/7. He's actually got a show on right now while we're recording.
Hey, I can't stop it. No.
Is that Rosario Vampire, Neil? Have no shame.
I haven't seen it.
It's terrible. It ended up on my Netflix account because one of my friends wanted to mess with me. Because they're like, what's the worst anime we can find on here? And put it on Scott's Netflix. Because he shares it with his family. And they'll think that's really weird.
Oh my gosh.
So I have that, and I have like Glitter Force or whatever. And that's in German, by the way.
Oh, wow.
They switched the subtitling to German. Or no, they switched the language settings to German. Which kudos to them for having a German option in the first place. But I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Yeah. So my family just doesn't ask about my viewing habits anymore because nobody knows.
Well, are we putting Death Parade to rest?
I think so.
Ooh, what a way to put it. I'm putting it to reincarnation because I do want a second season.
There you go. I would probably watch the second season.
I just feel like I'm a bit of an apologist on like not tightly wrapped up stories or stories that leave a lot of unanswered questions, because one of my favorite things is Dark Souls, and they don't wrap up almost anything ever.
But I think there's so much extra content that is there for the player to
because
explore.
of the medium. Because of the medium. So the anime couldn't have that. Like, an anime couldn't have that amount of extra stuff that exists within Dark Souls. And that's why I give it a free pass on stuff like that.
Also, I give it a free pass because I watch anime and 90% of that shit is just not wrapped up.
Yeah, exactly. Or it takes 900 episodes.
And I score them all low for that reason too. No.
It was only 500 episodes.
Enough on anime. Let's talk about a game we just finished up on the channel, at least very briefly, called Little Nightmares. Cookie played that.
Please, no need to cut it short just because I haven't played.
Oh, it's fine.
It's okay. I'm the only one that has played it.
Yeah, exactly. Lizzie and I watched Cookie play this over a 4-part series that you can find on YouTube, as well as fancyramen.com.
And also on the Fancy Ramen Facebook page. Almost said podcast.
This game is available on PC and Xbox One. We played it on the PS4, which I thought was fine. Little Nightmares is an adventure platformer game similar to developer Playdead's recent lauded release, Inside, as well as Limbo to an extent. In Little Nightmares, Tarsier, I believe it is, Studios, crafted a strange, unnerving tale of one young raincoat-dressed girl's escape from certain death aboard a large sea-bound ship.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was really cool.
The imagery was really awesome.
I enjoyed my playthrough. Didn't want to stop.
I enjoyed watching your playthrough.
I accidentally screamed a few times.
Yeah, that game had some not really jump scares because it's not like there's flashing a big giant bear at you. But like the mood that they present is so effective that when something drastic does happen, you are shook by it.
Mm-hmm. I almost had to wonder towards the end when you see, all the obese, almost people, if they're kind of playing off humanity's like greed, I thought that was really interesting.
Or as our executive producer, silent executive producer likes to call it, the Spirited Away scene.
I definitely understand that comparison. I think it's one that's been made quite a bit online.
I would imagine so. Those are pretty good things of Spirited Away. Did I make you watch that?
Yeah. And you're talking about, I remember that where there's a bunch of like bigger people and they're all like eating like crazy.
And they get turned into pigs.
I don't remember that part, but I do remember
that part happens at the start, but there's also like a feast sort of scene happening later on.
Right. I remember the feast. That's what I remember. Yeah.
They all get turned into pigs, and then you got to figure out which one's your mom and dad.
But none of them are.
And she wins. Yay.
As a whole, I'm really excited that something like this came out, because with as much excitement that Inside has, and I don't want to make this like a critical evaluation or review of Inside, I felt that Inside lacked a lot of design to it and personality in the artistic design.
It feels really blank and empty as someone who really enjoyed playing Inside. But I'd say that's almost a strength to it, because
that was what they were going for, type of thing?
Yeah, everybody is kind of like this faceless drone. Like,
spoilers. Maybe even you are.
Yeah, exactly. I think we talked about it a little bit, at least. So I wouldn't necessarily like dock Inside for that. That seemed more like a conscious choice than an omission for that particular game.
In the same way, though, they did that with Limbo, where everything is a black silhouette.
Yeah, Limbo's okay. It's a good puzzle game. I don't think that there's any sort of strength to the narrative that it tries to push.
And see, my issue with Inside and Limbo are that it seems like these games are meant to be trial and error games. Oh, I just got killed by the spider. That means I probably need to not run towards the spider. That might be a very simple example. But on the flip side, Little Nightmares, it gives you enough room, at least it seemed to, where it is really good at leading you to where your next checkpoint is and how you're supposed to get around things. It gives you enough time to react, and you don't technically have to die a whole lot. I think, Cookie, by the way, you actually played that game very well and very fast compared to a lot of other people that I've seen play it since.
Yeah, we did play it through fast, I felt like.
Like 3 hours? I've seen some play, or maybe even less than that, 2.5 hours. So
yeah, I think it was 2.5.
I've seen playthroughs go as high as 4 hours, apparently. So 4.5.
That's
I think it helped that we were all helping him solve the puzzles too, because like one time I was like, oh, there's the key, and then, so I think that maybe helped a little.
But I also think it's good design in that the game doesn't force you to die to figure out how you're not supposed to die.
Yeah.
Just got to be quicker than the fat person.
Exactly.
Or the person with those super long arms.
Fuck that guy. That guy cheated.
I know.
Yeah, the Jedi trick.
He was crazy.
Some major bullshit. Right? Did you guys have any final thoughts on
Little Nightmares? It's a nice little platformer. How much did it? Was it $15?
$20.
It was $20.
See, that seems a little high.
I want it to be $15.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. $20 for like a 2.5 hour game does seem maybe a little high.
Right.
The price is too damn high.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it doesn't really have any replay value, I don't think.
The only replay value would be to find more gnomes to hug.
More gnomes and more statues, like getting your collectibles.
Right.
But was I getting achievements for that? I should probably go back and look. We had all the things turned off, so.
Yep.
It seemed like something special happened when you would break the vases.
But what?
I don't know.
It's the same dark power that we saw the geisha involved with. There was no link otherwise. And Little Nightmares, in a way that Limbo and Inside also do, does not give you direct answers for much of anything.
Right.
And I can criticize the game for that.
Neil doesn't get answers, gets a lower score.
I kind of liked that, the mystery aspect of it.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool ending the game with a lot of questions when you started the game with almost nothing.
Right.
Like the narrative is what you take and what you can determine based upon your settings.
And what you want to take out of it, because I'm actually completely unfazed by the entire thing until you gave me the whole, there might have been pictures of her in the geisha's room, and I was like, well, that's cool. I was completely fine with her being like, all right, I'm trying to escape. Oh, fuck, I'm on a boat. All right, guess I need superpowers. Let's do this shit. But I guess how would she know that she gets superpowers by killing the geisha?
Yeah, I don't think I ever thought of her as trying to find her parents. I always thought her goal was escaping, basically.
Yeah. And then when she found out she couldn't escape, she was just like, going to the top. Let's do this.
Maybe it's a mixture of all those things because I'm not entirely certain either. But
yeah.
What kind of score would you guys give this?
Are we including price in the score?
Always.
I
include price in my scores.
It's hard not to. It's like you're going to let it factor whether or not you say
Right.
you are.
I think it's a totally fair thing to consider the price in a score. Like, a game can be exceptionally good, but if it is very poorly priced,
Yeah.
that's definitely a detriment. And vice versa. I feel like if I got a game that was amazing and I didn't pay that much for it,
Yeah.
it'd bring
it
my
makes
opinion
it,
up even more.
Right.
Or if I got a game that was crap, but it was like $2, I'm like, well,
For the price.
did it really
Right.
hurt me?
Right.
No, it didn't.
You have to ask yourself, how do you take in the value of something from an objective standpoint of, I got this game on sale for $2, but it was originally $50. Like, how do you value it? at
Oh,
that
right.
point?
I think considering what the actual price is as opposed to the price that you purchased at. When I think about The Long Dark, I thought about it as a $20 game, regardless from the fact that I bought it as a $10. And I thought, great for a $20 game.
I think of games as the price I pay for them. But I'll also say with the expectation of, hey, this game only cost me this much money.
Yeah, if you give the disclaimer for it, I think that's valuable to people too, because
yeah.
ultimately sales happen. Like, if you can find it at a discounted price and then that was a swaying decision for someone who rated it in one way or another, you can benefit from that.
If you were to find this game at a discounted price, I would score it pretty highly. Probably 4 out of 5.
What
That's my
discount would you
opinion.
put it at? That's the question.
Maybe half off, like $10
Okay.
game. 10
Oh,
or
yeah.
15.
I'm thinking as a whole, price considered, I'd give it a 3.5
Out of 5?
out of 5, a 7 out of 10.
Okay, we need to decide. We're using the 5-point scale or the 10-point scale?
Let's just go with the 10 point, because if we do points all the time, like
Right.
3 point something.
Considering the price that I had to pay for it, which was the tax, because Neil put the other.
If
little
it
bit
were a
down.
$20 game, though, how
Out
would you
of
feel
10?
about it?
Maybe a 6 or a 7 with the idea of Journey as a $20 game. I bought Journey 3 times. I physically purchased Journey 3 times,
At $20 a piece.
pretty much.
Like, not because you felt like you weren't getting a good enough experience on past versions, but because it was that good, right?
It was that good of a game, even though it also had no answers, philosophical questions throughout the roof. Like, every time you played that game, you got a little bit more out of it. It's about the replayability.
Yeah.
Whereas Little Nightmares, as we discussed, I'm not a completionist, so it's got no replayability for me.
It means absolutely nothing to both of us.
So it gets a little bit lower of a score because of unanswered questions, I guess. Damn it, Neil.
Well, let's take a break. When we come back, Lizzie, you will not be joining us. It's been great to have you on, as always.
Thank you.
Bye, Lizzie.
Bye.
I love you.
We brought up 2 games that came out this past Tuesday, one of which I think everyone on the subreddit for PSVR was very, very excited for. Farpoint.
Or as Neil and Scott were calling it, shooting game with bicycle frame gun.
Yeah, bicycle frame gun game.
Bicycle frame shooting game, I think is what we came up with.
Developed by Impulse Gear and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment America. Farpoint is a first-person shooter that utilizes the new PSVR aim controller. The controller doesn't feel too bad, having just handled it myself. Scott, you played a bit of it today, and Cookie, you've been playing it for the past week, I guess, at this point.
Kind of.
When you're not watching Death Parade, that is, of course, or playing the
Injustice.
next topic, yeah. How do you guys feel about this game?
First off, on the controller is not a beautiful object in any way. It really does look like a PVC pipe bicycle frame. And yet, it is exactly what it needs to be. Just playing for the very short period of time I did, it feels so comfortable. It's just the right length and size. All the buttons are really easy to access. Granted, I had some trouble finding the start and the share button, but that's because I didn't look for them. So Cookie had to guide my hands to those buttons when I was holding the controller.
We ghosted a little bit.
Which was confusing. Yeah.
In the designer's defense, I feel like those 2 buttons need to be way out of the way so you don't accidentally hit them.
No, I totally agree. I just didn't know where they were.
If anything, the share button could be moved to somewhere a little less conspicuous, but I wish they would have doubled up on the options button because it is, for its placement, what you need the options button to do in VR is to resync and reorient yourself. So if you hold the options button while playing this game, it actually shows you where the camera is. And so with me being left-handed, my right hand is at the front of the gun, and my thumb can easily access that options button. Whereas Scott, since he's right-handed,
it was a little harder to do that.
It's a little more awkward for him to go over to options without having to hit the joystick that's on that hand.
And I am the more common-handedness being right-handed, so you would think that it would be designed that way. But I think it's to mirror that the PlayStation controller.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Yes. The gun itself has a really, really nice weight to it.
The weight is perfect. Yeah, it's heavier than it looks, but it wouldn't be tiring to hold that for a long time either.
And to also support the weird design being that it's a full, not circle, but we're going to say that.
If you just think about a bicycle frame where the pedals is the bottom corner, and where your front tire goes is the top corner.
It's exactly that, well, more or less. But I imagine they did that so they could avoid potential hazards with breaking the controller if it didn't have the bottom portion of that grip, or not the grip, I guess, but you could easily not easily, I guess, but you could potentially get it caught on something, pull too hard and break it. I mean, you have to child-proof these things.
Why are you child-proofing guns?
Because I'm sure there's going to be some sort of child version of paintball or something coming out at some point in time. At least you think.
Are you talking about Splatoon?
More or less, except not owned by Nintendo, right?
I'm fine with this. Enough about the gun. Scott, so you played a little bit of Farpoint. What did you think?
Well, I thought PowerPoint was a great game, personally. It was nice that after playing it, you expressed to me that they designed it in a way where when the enemies get behind you, that they try and orient themselves to not just attack from your blind spot from behind, because I was freaking out whenever anything got behind me, because it's not, especially with the situation we were in, I understand that my height sometimes makes it a little tricky to orient me in a small room like this. And since I didn't want to knock over any mics on the table or anything, I was very cautious about doing fast rotations. So when things got behind me, I was just backpedal, keep backpedaling until I can see it again. But then they'd scuttle out in front of me and past that because I'm backpedaling more than I need to. Besides that complaint though, it was super fluid, very smooth, and it felt very immersive.
So did you experience any kind of motion sickness at all?
Not at all. None whatsoever. And I even did use the quick rotation analog stick which would be for my right hand, but it would have been for your left hand to, clip right or left a little bit. And no issues there. I thought that would be the one thing that may or may not get me.
So they've got a couple of different settings for that.
Mm-hmm.
And they've actually got more settings than I'm used to actually seeing for turning. So they've got small rotation at a click, small, just kind of jumps.
What you were on, right?
And that's what I keep it held on. Then they've got one that allows you to rotate at a bigger gap. Then they've got something called click rotation, which is basically you aim the PlayStation 4 the PlayStation aim controller,
mm-hmm.
and then you push the L3 or the R3, whatever. So you actually push in the analog stick.
And then that locks the center of your vision to it.
The center of your vision into that, which I haven't tried in the actual gameplay. And then they've got the smooth rotation.
That might be a little tricky in gameplay if I think about it. It would be nice if you need to make one immediate, large movement. But if you need to say make more on top of that, then you'd have to turn, click.
So at this point,
and return back to center with that as well, which is a little weird.
Thoughts of motion sickness? I was really impressed with Resident Evil 7. It only hit me a couple of times where I was okay, just the tiniest bit of motion sickness. This game, I quite literally had to try to get motion sick with.
Was that with the smooth turning?
That was with the smooth turning, but it wasn't also in the desert area. where I actually tried the smooth turning and the different turnings was in the menu setting where you're in this tight little corridor. And I think that's the only reason like the motion sickness really hit me, because with everything being really close, a lot of things start moving really fast around you. Whereas I'm constantly tapping the sprint button with the backpedaling and the moving around like super fast in the outside area. And there's just no problems whatsoever. So open spaces are happy for VR. And I'm actually really excited because I was like, okay, they did a good job with Resident Evil 7 with the PlayStation VR. I'm not 100% sure it's going to get much better. And I need to train my sea legs, my VR legs. After playing a lot of rigs in the PlayStation VR, it was like, whenever I smell the headset, because it's got a very distinct scent to it, it's like a rubbery plastic kind of still smells really new. Yeah. Whenever I smell that,
it's not
like,
bad though.
It's not bad, but now I correlate it with motion sickness. So as soon as I put on the headset, I get just a twinge of motion sickness even before anything turns on. And that's mainly because
scent is memory. It's like,
yeah. And whenever you put on the headset, if you are just first turning it on, it takes a second to orient itself. So like you're getting the menus and you're just like, everything's moving disjointedly. So I always get like a twinge of motion sickness when I first turn it on. So I kind of dread putting on the PlayStation VR headset.
I got a little off balance. I don't know if you guys saw me square my stance a bit more.
You got to do that every once in a while.
Yeah.
With this game. But so this game actually makes me excited and happy for the future of VR, whatever it may be, because it's got to continue, please.
Oh my gosh, VR support in like the next iteration of like Battlefield, I will get back into that game if it's something that I can use like a VR controller on like that. Like,
also,
I'm so excited.
Also, I'm very happy that PlayStation finally made a new thing for VR besides the actual headset itself, because the camera is still the PlayStation 3, PlayStation Eye, and the PlayStation 3 Move controllers.
Mm-hmm.
They're that old.
Well, is there new technology inside the aim?
I think so, because it tracks so much better. But they basically said, hey, this is a new controller. It's got new stuff with it. So if it's not new technology, at least they're optimizing it better, which makes me think maybe I should go. No, I don't want to go back and play the other on-rail shooting game.
Until Dawn.
It does track exceptionally well, because I did spend time just pushing objects off of the desk, Cat Simulator, and it was perfect. Like I had total understanding of where I was at spatially with that, and it did it perfectly. Like it moved as slowly as I did, and the point tracked exactly how I'd expect a real life object to move. Very good attention to detail on it, I think.
Do you think you had the same level of attention to detail in Injustice 2, Cookie?
Yes, if not even more. Great segue, by the way.
Very good.
So the other game that came out this week was Injustice 2. Me and a couple of the other old school Fancy Ramen Podcast original members, OGs for life, I guess, we kind of talk about fighting games, and Injustice was one of like the fighting games that I really enjoyed. I'm not a huge Mortal Kombat fighter, but for some reason throwing the DC skin on it and the way they like made it just so wonderful. Injustice 2's got a couple of tweaks to what they did with the original game. So one thing that they did was they put a 25% speed boost on it. So it's the Street Fighter Turbo of Mortal Kombat games. So it's much faster and it makes it so much smoother. And it's got a couple of different like random modes outside the story. I enjoyed the continuation of what's going on in the addition of Brainiac and why Darkseid is wherever the fuck he is, whenever he is. It's cool, but fighting-wise, so much smoother, a lot of new mechanics. They've got just an all-star roster of, like, characters that you can play that I didn't even realize were in the game, but I knew were in the game. They reskin characters, but they also just, like, rename the moves that they do. So when you're using the Flash, there's a skin that's Reverse Flash skin, but he's got, his movesets are slightly different and his parameters are slightly tweaked whenever you put that skin on. But yeah, so they're different skins, and I think I'll end up buying the season pass just so I can get all the new characters.
Imagine
weird.
That. We talked about this last week.
I'm glad we
too.
took a bet on it.
Maybe. We'll have to find out because as of right now, who's with the season pass? I guess it's Sub-Zero, Starfire, and Robin. Fun game, good mechanics. There's got this new system called the Multiverse, and it's basically exactly what it sounds like. Just a bunch of missions to do, go to different areas of the multiverse, beat up on some folks, call it a day.
Sweet.
Yeah.
There's also a guild system. So if you guys are interested, join the Fancy Ramen Guild. We have a guild.
Right.
We've got 9 members so far.
And you'll be able to find it just by searching Fancy Ramen.
Mm-hmm.
That's 2 words.
Yep, 2 words. And if you go to the Fancy Ramen Facebook page, I will be posting the guild's guild ID on there as well.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Well, guys, we're going to start a new segment today that we're going to very aptly, at least for now, name the Hot List. We're going to jump through a handful of topics, and we're just going to get responses out
As quick
short
as
and
possible.
sweet, right?
Yeah.
So starting off, a patch for Mario Kart 8 removes an offensive taunt from the Inkling Girls repertoire known as the Italian Salute. The right move or overly sensitive?
At first, I was going to say overly sensitive, but I'm going to say right move because, if Europeans want to be touchy about this being an offensive gesture, fine. That's not our culture. Maybe we can't argue about what is offensive to them or not.
I'm going overly sensitive because triggering people is trigger. Honestly.
Okay, during Nintendo's latest Nintendo Direct, we received information on the upcoming title ARMS,
baby.
As well as dates and times for their global test punch, by the way. How do you like that test fire? Now you get a test punch. How interested are you guys in this game?
I am on this shit after I found out that it's going to be like it's not going to be as intense as Custom Robo, but it looks like it's going to be like Custom Robo. Customize your arms, have characters that have different like core move sets or abilities. I'm all about this.
Yeah, it's totally Virtual On and Custom Robo put together.
Exactly.
So I am also totally on this as well. I hope it's going to be better than the global test fire is my only concern because the global test fire was honestly the worst way for a beta to happen, in my opinion.
Sure.
Because not everybody can do that at those specific times. And then the only times you have them posted are you got to go into the deep web in order to find out when the test fire was. So I hope that's not the case for this test punch. And then you also have to disseminate between, okay, what time zone am I in? And where does this fit into where they're actually showing when these test fires are going to be? Well, these test punches are going to be. But I'm in.
Switch Flare. We also learned that the Nintendo Switch will be getting new colors for their Splatoon 2 release with neon green and pink Joy-Cons. No word yet whether we're getting that in America, but if it does, is this the system you're getting, Scott?
I said they make green, I'd buy it. Yes.
You're willing to compromise having a pink one too?
I had a Halo 3 edition Xbox 360 that was olive drab green. Came with a green controller, absolutely adored it. Bought my sister a controller, hot pink. I've already had this.
It's the pink lady.
Yeah, it's just neon green now. I'm totally down for it.
On a weird side note, whenever I played Halo, I also played in all pink armor, and my character's name was Howard. Don't ask.
You haven't picked up your second Switch yet. What about you, Cookie?
If I end up talking my wife into getting the second Switch, yes, because our actual color scheme for me and her is green and purple. So we're just missing. Yeah. We're just missing the purple controller, and we also had a pink lady for a PlayStation 3 controller.
Nice.
And an Xbox 360 controller. So
I like pink controllers actually.
They work out just fine.
You never lose them
until you do.
Because someone's like, I like that. I'm taking your pink controller.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Phantom Dust re-release is free for Xbox One and PC.
What? I think I downloaded that on PC, and I signed up to download it on the PC, but using my iPad, so it's not actually on my PC.
Yet. It's curious because the Phantom Dust remake or reboot, you could say, was either canceled or put on hiatus. The fact that they're making this move certainly seems to indicate that maybe they're gauging people's interest for a reboot of Phantom Dust. Destiny 2 also released some long-awaited gameplay footage over the last week. There's a few minutes of it if you actually dig deep enough.
Quick answer, didn't watch, don't play Destiny, won't play Destiny.
And what about you, Cookie?
Quick answer, did watch, did play Destiny, might play Destiny.
You're kind of shaky on it, I take it though?
Yeah, because, Destiny caught my interest for all of 5 minutes and then recaught my interest for all of 5 minutes and then did not catch my interest. It caught my interest a little more than The Division.
I went through something like, felt like 20 minutes of footage and managed to find maybe a collective 2 or 3 minutes of actual in-game footage. Looks like Destiny. The graphics certainly look great, but I don't really know what it has to offer me over every other FPS shooter at this point.
Unlike Farpoint, which puts you in the action.
If you want to point at us, you can send us an email at
fancyramen@podcast.com.
Nice.
Damn it, you put me on the spot.
You did great.
fancyramen.com.
That's right. Podcast@fancyramen.com. We're out of time, so we're going to actually put some emails we got this week onto Nixt. I apologize.
Also, why does he get to do the plug? I tried to do the plug earlier, and you're like, fuck you, Cookie.
Because we're going to put the plug in here.
Well, fine. Okay,
And
I accept this.
By all means, leave us a like or review if you feel strongly about us. And of course, send us criticism as well if you're not feeling this new format.
We take criticism seriously.
Yes, we do.
One email was like, hey, you should probably try this. And we were like,
we're doing it.
Let's do this.
Guys, it's been great podcasting with you. This was the Fancy Ramen Podcast. I'm Neil.
I'm Scott.
Oh, I'm Cookie. Hi. I was going to say something in Japanese, but realized I don't know Japanese. Baka!
Bye, guys.